Hello, I'm Dr. Afzal, and I'm going to talk about the poem On Killing a Tree, which comes in the text Zeitgeist Readings on Society and Culture, prescribed for the second semester BA, BSc, BCom, and BBA students of the University of Calicut. The poem is written by Jeev Patel. Through this poem, intends to convey his eco-concerns, resorting to the most ironical way of expression, that is, as the title of the poem suggests, how to kill a tree. The poet smuggles into the reader's mind the idea that no matter how you try to do away with the trees, no matter you jab with a knife or you hack and chop, the tree will somehow care to grow out as a full tree later, unless you pull it out completely now. So that's the poem is about. Now let's see the poem in detail. As we go, first we will discuss the poem stanza-wise and the words that demand explanation we will deal. And secondly, we will analyze the themes in the poem. And thirdly, we will see the devices and figures of speech the poet has incorporated in the poem to better conveyance of his concerns. So the poem is written in 4 stanzas and in free verse. A free verse in the sense poetry that does not rhyme or have any regular rhythm pattern. Okay. So now let's see the poem in detail. The first stanza is here. Let me read. It takes much time to kill a tree. Not a simple jab of the knife will do it. It has grown slowly, consuming the earth, rising out of it, feeding upon its crust, absorbing years of sunlight, air, water, and out of its leprous hide sprouting leaves. So that's the first stanza. The words may be new are jab and leprous hide. Jab means a sudden rough blow, and leprous hide means here it means the discolored bark, the outer skin, the outer layer of a tree. So let's discuss this stanza. For a person who is informed of the process of growing a tree, or the growth of a tree from its seed state, it will be very difficult for him to kill the tree. Though the first stanza literally talks about the physical strains one has to take to fell a tree, it basically has another layer of meaning that the person who is going to kill a tree should know how much time and pain the tree undertook to come to this stature, because it has grown slowly, consuming the earth, rising out of the earth, feeding upon the crust, absorbing the sunlight. Right? For years, it has been in a process of growing, consuming the nutrition in the crust and also air and sunlight. And out of its leprous hide, leaves came out, twigs came out, and became branches. So emotionally, it's not a simple growth. It has taken much pain, and thus it's not easy to completely do away with a tree, the poet says. A simple jab or a cut of a knife won't do. Got it? And we can see the poet compares the bark of the tree to the skin of a leper. Here, the word leprous hide means the discolored bark, or as we call it, the skin of a tree. So in the first stanza, the poet says that killing a tree is not an easy task. So that's the first stanza is about. Now let's see the second stanza of the poem. So, I read, so, hack and chop, but this alone won't do it. Not so much pain will do it. The bleeding bark will heal, and from close to the ground will rise curled green twigs. Miniature boughs, which if unchecked, will expand again to former size. The word new, so that's the first, the second stanza. Now, let's take the word hack. Hack means cut roughly by striking heavy blows. So let's see the meaning of the stanza. The poet here says, even if you cut it roughly or chop the tree down, causing much pain to the tree, that won't be enough to kill a tree. Here, the poet attributes the human feelings of pain to the tree. Don't you see? According to these lines, trees and plants are also as sensitive to the pain and feelings of human beings, or the feelings of pain and joy as we human beings are sensitive to. If you cut them, if you cut trees, they bleed. The sap, the liquid that oozes out from the bark of the tree, the sap, that may be blood of the tree, right? That trickles down or oozes out from the wounded barks. And that's how we have the phrase bleeding bark here in the fourth line of the stanza. The poet wants the killer of the tree, the one who is going to kill the tree, do away with the tree, that even your chops and hacks will not fell a tree forever, for good. From the bleeding barks, twigs will rise up in the tender green color, and small boughs will start to grow, start to take form. These boughs and twigs will slowly go up, and that will grow into the former size of a complete tree, right, of that complete tree. So killing a tree is not possible in these ways. The first stanza talked about some ways. That's not enough to kill a tree. The second stanza also gave some ideas about killing a tree, but that, according to the poet, that methods that are not sufficient to kill a tree completely. So now let's see the third stanza. I read, no, the root is to be pulled out of the angering earth. It is to be robbed, tied, and pulled out, snapped out, or pulled out entirely, out from the earth cave, and the strength of the tree exposed to the source, white and wet, the most sensitive, hidden for years inside the earth. That's the third stanza. The third stanza here gives directions to the killer of the tree if he really cares to terminate or eliminate the tree from the earth. Again, in third stanza, he gives some directions. Let's see what are they. But before that, you have noticed the negation no the stanza is starting with, right? Whether the poet says a big no to killing trees now, we might tend to interpret in that way, but we are not sure. So let's go according to the meaning of the following lines. Here he says no, in the sense that these methods are not the ones you have to adopt to kill a tree. The roots are to be pulled out from the anchoring earth. The roots of the tree are set in the deep caves of the earth to stand firmly above the earth, just like how a ship anchors or lays its anchor down deep to the bed of the body of the water body. How a ship lays his anchor, the tree also lays its anchor in the form of deep set roots down deep in the caves of the earth. So the tree also is firmly rooted and anchored. So those roots, they have to be pulled out of the caves, earth caves with a rope, he says. Then only the real strength of the tree, the most sensitive hidden part of the tree, that is the deep set roots with white color and wetness of the earth will come out. You may have noticed the end point, the end of every root will be having the tender part. It will be white in color and it will have some wetness. So that's the source of the tree. It sustains those roots, they sustain the tree. By pulling them out, the task of felling a tree is complete. Now, there won't be any further growth. So that's the third stanza is about. Now let's see the fourth stanza, where the complete elimination of a tree has been worked out. Let me read the fourth stanza. Then the matter of scorching and choking in sun and air, browning, hardening, twisting, withering, and then it is done. Musical it is. It means, the fourth stanza means, once the tree has been uprooted, then gradually it withers and dries up with the action of heat and wind in the sun, open to sun, right? Open to the weather. The trunk will become brown in color. The trunk will twist and it will get hardened. So finally, the tree will die this way. The killing is done. So in the fourth stanza, the killing is done. So this is the stanza-wise analysis of the poem, interpretation of the poem. And now let's analyze the poem for the themes. So, on killing a tree, that's a scathing criticism of human callousness and cruelty in chopping down trees for urbanization, agriculture, and industrialization. Maybe apparently the poem gives a how-to-do manual of killing a tree, right? The poem gives a how-to-do manual of killing a tree. But actually, it's a passionate appeal not to kill or cut trees. It's against deforestation. And another aspect is the sturdiness of the trees. The sturdiness of the trees, because the trees, they are very adamant. They are not ready to quit. They are not ready to quit, though they receive so many jabs, chops, and cuts on their skin, and they bleed. They try to bounce back to life in full swing in the form of small twigs. Right. So that's a kind of sturdiness, as well a kind of willpower of that tree. That tree need not be the tree that we will discuss. So that are the themes in the poem. And apart from that, we can find anthropocentrism and ecocentrism. Man is always concerned about his existence. He does not care about the existence of the other inmates on the earth. Right? For example, he does not attach any emotional values to other beings on earth. For example, the trees, the animals, or whatever. So nature versus human being. That's visible here. In that sense also, we can interpret. So now, let's analyze the literary techniques used in the poem. Okay? That are, he has used so many literary techniques or devices. We can find, for example, there are enjambment, metaphor, personification, alliteration, and repetition. So these are the major techniques, devices used by the poet to convey meaning in a better way. So first, let's see enjambment. I hope we can pronounce it En-trance also. En-trance. So I'll tell you what's the En-trance or in German. That's the continuation of a sentence without a pause beyond the end of a line, couplet or stanza. That's a continuation. If a sentence continues to another line, if it does not end in one single line, rather it continues to another line, that technique is called in German. Okay? One sentence will continue into another line or lines without any punctuation. For example, in the first stanza, we can take the sentence, not a simple jab of the knife will do. It did not end with jab in the first line. It entered to the sentence gets completed in the second line, will do it. Right? That's what that technique is called in German. And there are other examples also. I'll read. It has grown out slowly. Grown slowly, consuming the earth. That runs in another line also. Other examples are rising out of it, feeding upon its crust, absorbing years of sunlight, air, water, and out of its leprous hide sprouting leaves. That long sentence, it comes into some 2, 3, 4 lines, 5 lines. So that's what we call. Another example is there. The most sensitive, hidden for years inside the earth. It did not stop with hidden. It came to the other line, that's for years inside the earth. So that technique is called in German or En-trance. So another device used in the poem is metaphor. As we know, a metaphor is a figure of speech in which a word or phrase is applied to an object or action to which it is not literally applicable. That's a metaphor. Examples for metaphor in the poem are leprous hide, the uneven color of the surface of the trunk of a tree. That's compared to the skin of a person suffering from leprosy. So that's one, leprous hide. And another one is bleeding bark. Bleeding bark, that sap, that liquid substance that comes out of the tree, the sap coming out of the tree where it is cut, that's compared to the bleeding from the wound in a human body. Okay? So that's a metaphor. And it's a personification as well. It's a personification as well. The bleeding of a human body is dragged here to compare to the bleeding bark. Sometimes, not only that personification, moreover, the whole poem, if we want to take the imagery tree as a human being, we can take. In that sense, it's because cut on human body, bleeding, all these things we can compare to human, of that tree into human body. So there is a kind of personification. Not only that, another aspect here I want to introduce to you, tell you, is that the tree can be considered as an ideology or a habit. Okay, it can be considered an ideology like revolutionary ideology. Maybe the author is not only talking about his eco-concerns, or rather he means to introduce other ideas as well in the form, for example, a revolutionary ideology, which is deep set in the minds of people. Maybe someone is trying to pull that out or eradicate that ideology. So the tree is the ideology, revolutionary ideology. Sometimes the rulers, they want to annihilate that ideology. So the poet ironically says, if you want to annihilate something, maybe that revolutionary ideology, maybe your personal habit, which is the deep rooted in your mindset, then also you have to find the root of that habit and uproot that habit. Then only you will be able to do away with that habit. So in that sense also, in that realms also, we can find meanings in the poem. It may be habit, as I have told you. So there is personification. And another device he used is alliteration. Alliteration, I'll tell you, it's a repetition of a consonant sound in two or more words closely placed. Okay, if a consonant sound is repeated in two or three or more places very adjacently, very closely, that's called alliteration. Here we have a bleeding bark, b sound repeated in bleeding bark, and also v sound repeated in white and wet. Got it? That's alliteration. And now we have another device, repetition. Okay, repetition, in order to give emphasis upon some ideas, we will repeat something, right? 2 times, 3 times we repeat. That's what we call the device, the technique, repetition. The word pulled out is repeated in this poem thrice in order to show the pain or the stress that a person should have at the time of doing away with a tree completely. Right? So the poem has a repetition also. So these are the devices and figures of speech we can find in this poem. The imagery we have to take, the imagery of a tree, we can compare it to human body, human being, human habit, revolutionary idea, and so on. Now the interpretation you can make your own. So that's the poem on killing a tree for you. Thank you.